Okay, so we've got a question here about whether I'm using a frying pan or a casserole dish. So I'm using kind of a high-sided casserole dish, really, but you can use a frying pan, you can use a saute pan, a wok, a saucepan. Ideally, something you have a lid for, because at some point we'll need to put a lid on just to aid with the cooking process. So as you'll see now, I'm just going to intermittently be stirring these onions so that they don't burn or that they don't stick to the bottom of the pan, like so. So whilst we're just browning the onions, obviously that's not the most exciting thing to be watching. So I'm going to pass over to Miriam, who's just going to talk you through, I'll just unmute her shortly, who's just going to talk you through the donation amount for medical aid for Palestinians and what that actually means in real terms. So Miriam, I'm just going to unmute you in 2 ticks, so if you just bear with me. If I can find you on here. Just bear with me. Okay. Miriam, you should be able to unmute yourself now. Can Miriam hear me okay, Matt?
Hi there, can everyone hear me today?
Wonderful. Go for it, Miriam.
Awesome, fantastic. So we have a few different donation amounts here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different donation amounts. And we're going to start off with the highest, which is £100. And that could help pay for 8 pediatric disposable breathing circuit wires for children in intensive care. Then we have £75, which could buy 1 pediatric respiratory cannula ventilation, which could save a child's life. Then we have £50, which could pay for 6 drip bags for patients in cardiac arrest. And then we have £25, which could help buy 15 bloodline inlets for life-saving blood transfusions. And then finally, we have £10, which could pay for 2,000 milligrams of life-saving antibiotics. And with any donation, it would really help. But with these different intervals, we can, each one would help with every different situation. So I will also paste this in the chat so everyone can see. And then after every so often, I'll repeat it so then we can remember as well. Thank you so much, everyone.
That's great. Thank you for that, Miriam. So you can just see what a difference that money that you're donating will make. So I've just put the 2 Just Giving links into that chat function again. The first link is for medical aid for Palestinians. The second link is for Palestine Solidarity Campaign. So please feel free to donate to either or both, and that money will be greatly received and really good benefit the people of Palestine, either through political activities or through aid directly to those people who need it on the ground. So we've got a question here, is how does the equipment reach the people? So we were hoping to have somebody here from Medical Aid for Palestinians to be able to talk to you a little bit more about how that happens. But what I will certainly be doing after today is getting some more information, so that any questions like this, I can certainly reply to and get all that information out to people after the event and on an ongoing basis. So there are any questions that we can't answer right now, we'll get back to as soon as we possibly can. I can see that people are saying Israel and Egypt. So yeah, okay. So we have actually Sarah, who is from Palestine today. So that's amazing. And if you could let people know very briefly how that aid actually gets in, that'd be fantastic. So just bear with me whilst I just unmute Sarah. Long list of people now, so just finding where you are. I think that's you. Sarah, is that you being able to unmute yourself now?
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me. Hi,
yes,
everyone.
That's great. Go for it.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm so sorry. I've not been very well, so I'm not looking as professional as I would like to be speaking on behalf of Medical Aid for Palestinians. We have managed to get some aid in through the Rafah crossing, and we're working to get more in. I think the key for us right now is both the aid, calling for a ceasefire, but also establishing what we can do in the longer term, because the health systems, as I'm sure you're seeing from the news, are being destroyed. So we are working very closely with other partners. I think this is, in the darkness of all of this, I think that the joy is that we work together with all these other organizations, and we all use our strengths to get what we can into the people. But the situation is absolutely dire at the moment, and very grateful to all of you and to Raheel for your support at this time. Raheel, I'll stop there, partly because I'm losing my voice, but I'm happy to try and answer other questions as we go forward.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate you doing that. So hopefully that explains to people a little bit more about how that aid gets in, the great work that MAPS are doing. We're just going to keep continuing with the cooking, because obviously I understand people have got the onions in, they might be getting quite brown. So the next thing that you need to go in with is your ginger and garlic. So I've got approximately 1 teaspoon each of ginger paste and garlic paste going into the pan alongside those onions. And we're just going to cook that for another couple of minutes or so to incorporate that ginger and garlic and cook out some of that rawness into the dish. You can, by all means, use fresh ginger and fresh garlic. For the purpose of today, it's just far easier to use paste. But if you're using fresh garlic, then about finely chopped would be absolutely fine. I've got a couple of people asking me whether they can record that locally and take some screenshots for the benefit of social media. If I can kindly request that you don't take any screenshots, please, for social media, simply because we don't know where that will go, which platforms it will end up on. And similarly, for people recording it onto your own devices, again, if I could kindly ask you not to do that. I don't actually think you can do that anyway, as I'm the main host for the event. As I said, I am recording this event, as I said previously, so I can definitely share some screenshots and share some recording on my platform as deemed appropriate, and then you can by all means repost those and use that content at a later date, if that's okay. Okay, that's fine. So Nusrat's saying that my onions aren't brown yet. That's absolutely fine. I think a couple of other people are saying exactly the same. So that might be for a couple of reasons. It might be that you're using an induction or an electric hob that can be a little bit slower. If you're using gas, by all means, turn the heat up ever so slightly to a medium to high heat, just making sure that you're keeping an eye on those onions and constantly stirring them, please. As you can see in my pan, these onions have gone quite brown now. I've got the ginger and garlic in as well. I've actually turned the heat down a little bit because mine were browning very quickly. But we are all going to be at different stages when we're cooking this. It's nigh impossible to keep the best part of what we've got nearly 200 people now cooking and everyone being at the same pace. So if you want to take little notes or just try and remember best where we are, I will recap as we go through. That's no problem at all. I will try and slow down even more if that makes it easier for people. Okay. All right, so what I would like you to do then at this stage, if your onions are nicely browned, sort of caramelized color like you can see in my pan here, I would like you to go in with the tomatoes, please. So I've got here 3 medium tomatoes, finely chopped, or you can use half a can of chopped tomatoes. Now, don't do that if your onions are still browning, all right? But if they are brown, because I don't want them to burn, now is the time to go in with your tomatoes, all right? You don't have to take out any of the seeds or any of the juice. It can all go in. And at this stage, I will just recap for everybody in terms of what we've done so far. So I started off with a couple of tablespoons of oil of choice. I used rapeseed oil, but you can use vegetable oil, olive oil, whichever you prefer. On a medium heat, I then added in 2 medium onions, finely chopped. And we've been browning those for a few minutes on a medium to high heat, ultimately, to get them nicely caramelized. I then added 1 teaspoon each of ginger paste and garlic paste. Cook that out for a minute or 2. And now I've added in 3 medium tomatoes, just finely chopped, into the pan. And we're just going to let those come together. At this stage, if you have a lid, hopefully you do, if you just pop your lid on the pan, that will just help soften those tomatoes a little bit quicker. And then we can check those in just a minute or 2. So whilst we're just waiting for that, just by way of show of hands, it'd be really good to just gauge whether people would be interested in doing more of these cookalongs, specifically to try and raise some more funds and awareness for Palestine. So just give me a little wave or a thumb up if you'd be happy to engage in some more in the future. That's amazing. So I am looking to get some different speakers, etc., and different organizations involved into the new year. So we'll look to do another one towards the end of January and maybe on a monthly basis. So please do look out for that information, mostly on my Instagram page, but feel free to share on WhatsApp, etc. And then that would be amazing. And I can see lots of people have got their hands raised and are waving as well. So thank you for that. What I will do shortly is just see if I can get a quick update in terms of how we're doing with the fundraising as well. So why don't I do that whilst we're just waiting for these onions to brown? So I can see that we've already raised £865 for Palestine Solidarity Campaign, which is amazing. Thank you so much for that. And just in looking at the medical aid for Palestinians, wow, so we're actually over £3,000 now. So that's £3,000, £3,054 to be precise. That's phenomenal. So please do keep donating. That's going to make a huge difference to the people of Palestine. And that's extremely generous of yours. So please keep doing that. Are there any other questions coming through yet? No. Yes, okay. So the question is, were the tomatoes the last thing that went into the pan? So I'm just going to take the lid off again so you can see what's going on. So yes, the tomatoes were the last thing to go into the pan. So far in the pan, we've just got some oil, we've got some onions, we've got ginger and garlic and tomatoes. And everything is just softening down nicely in the pan. If it looks like things are starting to stick a little bit, or you're concerned that they might burn a little bit, then you can turn the heat down to a low to medium heat at this stage. That's not a problem. But shortly what we'll be doing is going in with the chicken. If you're not making the chicken version and you're doing the vegetarian version, again, we'll go in with the vegetables. Now the vegetables will cook a lot quicker than the chicken will. So I'll just keep you updated in terms of the timings for that. In approximately 10 minutes or so, we'll be being joined by Ben Jamal from PSC and also by Jeremy Corbyn. So we will then pause the cooking for a short period of time whilst we just allow them to speak for a short period of time then. In fact, Ben's already with us. So Ben, I'll come to you in about 10 minutes if that's okay. Okay. So what I'd like you to do then at this stage is, because we don't want this to all burn, is to go in with your chicken and or your vegetables. Now, different people will be doing a different combination of vegetables if that's what you're doing. So I've got here one whole chicken that's skinless, but it's in pieces, so it's on the bone. So I'm going to pop that into the pan straight away. Now, anytime you're handling chicken, please do make sure that you thoroughly wash your hands with soap and water prior to handling before you touch any other of the ingredients or any other utensils. Let's do that quickly. And then what I'd like to do now is just to stir that chicken in to that base masala so we can get that seared nicely, taking on some color before we start adding in some spices. And then once we've added the spices, at that point, we can pop a lid on and just leave things to cook for a little while whilst we go to our speakers for a short period of time. Okay, please do keep those questions coming in. If you have some questions, I've got my team here helping me field those questions for you. So please don't be afraid to ask those questions again. So Tanya's saying we're using prawn pieces. That's absolutely fine if you're doing that. Again, they will cook a lot quicker. So maybe you need to put it on a slightly lower heat. Okay, so at the moment, I've got this on a medium heat, just searing it for a little while longer. In fact, you could probably turn the heat up. If you're using chicken, if you turn the heat up to a medium to high heat, just because we really want that chicken to take on a nice color before we add any of the spices. Yeah, okay. So we had another question about, can we donate next week or does it have to be tonight? So that's a great question. And there's a two-part question. So I'll come to the second part in a second. So the first thing is that I will be leaving this link open for at least a week, maybe even longer. We'll see how it goes. If it kind of tails off and we see that there's not many more donations coming in, then we'll kind of close that link off. But there's no reason why those links can't stay open for a period of time. So please don't feel like you've missed out if you can't donate this evening. Please continue to use that link, and as long as it's live, you can keep donating. The second part of that question is, how do the medical supplies get through the blockade? So Sarah did touch upon that earlier. So rather than repeating that for the sake of the event and to keep it going, Sarah, if you wouldn't mind, just in a sentence or two, just popping that into the chat function, that would be really helpful so people can read that and see what's going on. I also said that after today, I will send everyone some further information through the Eventbrite email platform so that you can receive that information. Okay. So what I'd like to do at this stage then, that chicken should have taken on some nice color, all right? So just giving it a little bit more of a stir. And we're now going to turn the heat down to a low heat. And we're going to add in the spices. So the reason I've turned that heat down is if you add the spices in with a really hot pan, they can burn. So we need to make sure that we don't do that, particularly with powdered spices. All right, so I've just turned the heat down. And these are the spices that we're going to be using. So hopefully you can see that on the camera. So first and foremost, we've got some salt. So 1 to 2 teaspoons of salt, depending on how much salt you like in your diet. You can put less and always season later if you wish. I've got half a teaspoon of red chili flakes. Be careful with those because clearly they can be really spicy. So if you want it to be more mild to medium, then maybe go in with 1/4 or even 1/8 of a teaspoon. If you like your food spicier, you can put in even more. I've got half a teaspoon of turmeric powder here. I've got 1.5 teaspoons of ground cumin powder. 2 teaspoons of ground coriander powder, and then I've got half a teaspoon here of curry powder. I've also got here 1.5 teaspoons of garam masala, but I'm going to put that in towards the end of cooking so it stays nice and fragrant. Now, regardless of whether you're doing the corn version, the chicken version, or the veg version, you can all go in with your spices at this stage. Yeah. So, and some people are even doing a fish version. So again, yes, you can all go in at the same time. The only thing, as I said, I don't want you to put in this stage is the garam masala. You can put that in later. But everything else can go into the pan. I'll just recap that as well as I'm doing that. So some of you may not have your spices already sort of on the plate or measured out as I did there. So into that pan has gone 1 to 2 teaspoons of salt, just regular table salt. half a teaspoon of turmeric powder, half a teaspoon of curry powder, like just a mild curry powder. If you bought it from the shop, it'll tell you on there how mild or spicy it is, so you can always increase or decrease the quantity. Half a teaspoon of red chili flakes, and again, you can put more or less depending on how spicy you would like it. I put in 1.5 teaspoons of ground cumin powder and 2 teaspoons of ground coriander powder. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add into this about half a glass of just tap water, just to stop the spices from burning and also to create a bit of a sauce. And the garam masala we're going to put in towards the end of cooking. So let's just give that a little bit of a stir, like so. And then we can now turn this heat up to sort of a medium heat. And I'm going to pop the lid on, and we're going to leave that to cook whilst we now go to some of our guest speakers just to tell us a little bit more about the great work that they're doing. So, Ben, hopefully I can't quite make out where you are on here, but I can certainly see that you've joined us. So, Ben, I'm going to ask if you can unmute yourself now, and if you could just say hello first of all. Are you there?
Hi there. Hi, Rahel.
Hey, Ben,
Hi,
how are you?
everybody.
You okay?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you loud and clear. Can everyone else hear Ben? Just give us a wave if you can. Great. So, Ben, thank you so much, first of all, for giving up some of your time this evening. And I know we spoke a little bit about what you might, some of the sort of core themes that people had asked me about. But if I could just hand over to you for a few minutes just to talk about the great work you're doing and also what this looks like moving forwards beyond all the coverage that we're getting now. Clearly, this is going to be a long-term solution we need, and some of the political work that you're taking part in, please.
Yeah, thanks, Rahel. And listen, first of all, thank you to Rahel for organising this. Thank you to all of you for coming along. And apologies, because I was actually hoping to join you and cook tonight as well, but I actually flew out to Berlin today, so I'm speaking to you from a hotel room in Berlin. I got off the train station in Berlin to come to the hotel, and the first street I walked down was called Yitzhak Rabin Strasse, and the second was Ben Gurion Strasse. So Germany knows how to make a good Palestinian boy feel at home. So listen, the money that you're raising tonight is crucial. It's crucial for the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, for us to continue our work of solidarity. For those of you who don't know us, very, very briefly, we are the largest Palestine Solidarity group in the UK, actually the largest in Europe. Before October, we had 76 branches around the country. Towns and cities across the country where there are activists who are taking the message of justice for the Palestinian people out into their town centres on a weekly basis. And we have affiliations from over 15 trade unions at a national level. I'm stating the obvious when I say that the Palestinian people need that solidarity more than ever. I want to just focus a little bit, first of all, on the current situation and our response to it. You don't need me to tell you, and I speak to you as a Palestinian, we Palestinians are experiencing one of the darkest moments in our enduring struggle for liberation. I was taken back in the past few days to a moment about a week after October the 7th. I was watching Newsnight, maybe some of you saw it as well, and there was an American analyst on there, a political analyst. He was asked a question. He was asked, how many Palestinians do you think will be killed before there is serious political pressure on Israel to call a ceasefire? And he gave a very cold and a very realistic answer. He did a calculation based on how many Palestinians had been killed in 2014 and what the rate of killing was in then. And some of you will recall in that summer, which we thought was a benchmark, Israel killed over 2,000 Palestinians, including over 500 children in a 52-day period. And he compared the rate of killing then to what was happening now. And at that moment, Israel was killing Palestinians at the rate of one every 10 minutes. And he did a calculation. He said, I think we should expect at least 20,000 Palestinians to be killed. And with everything I know, and I've been campaigning for decades for the Palestinian people, with everything I know about the complicity of Western governments in allowing Israel to build and cement a system of apartheid, I genuinely was chilled and thought that's not conceivable. It's not conceivable that the world's governments are going to stand by whilst across our TV screens we see 20,000 people killed. But here we are, some 10 weeks after I watched that, and Israel has now killed over 29,000 Palestinians, including those who are missing, presumed dead, under the rubble of their homes, including 11,000 children. So we need urgently still a permanent ceasefire, and PSC's main activities over the past 9 to 10 weeks have been to try to generate the only mechanism we know to put pressure on political leaders who are not standing silently by, but have been complicit, have been green lighting what we are realistically and legitimately calling a genocide. And we use that word, we don't use it loosely, we use it in the same way that 800 scholars of genocide studies have used it, forensically and accurately. And the only mechanism we know is to build popular pressure. And one aspect of that, maybe the most visible, are the large demonstrations that we have been organising in London. I'm sure some of you have been on those, and we've had up to 800 unprecedented levels of people marching, demanding a permanent ceasefire and demanding a lifting of the siege of Gaza. And that is now urgently needed. Beyond those figures that I've given you of Palestinians being killed, there's nearly 2 million Palestinians who are now sheltering, displaced, unable to return home in winter, in the rain, taking shelter wherever they can. And as I'm sure you heard earlier, most international health agencies are readying themselves for the outbreak of major epidemics. So we need to keep building that political pressure. Alongside those demonstrations in London, we have been organising days of action where we have asked people to come out in their towns and cities, and not just in major cities, but people have been holding vigils, holding protests outside Barclays Bank. I'll come back to that. In towns like Abergavenny and Dorchester and Tunbridge Wells. I found, to my astonishment, a few weeks ago, there were over 500 people marching in Tunbridge Wells calling for a ceasefire. So those activities remain sadly urgent. You know we don't have a ceasefire. On January the 6th, across the country, people will be out again in towns and cities in a day of action. And on January the 13th, we've asked everyone to come back to London to mobilise for what we've asked to be a global day of action. And we need hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people marching to keep up the pressure. People sometimes say, what's the purpose of demonstrations if you don't have a ceasefire? I would say two things. First of all, Israel is becoming increasingly isolated. Some of you would have seen the vote in the UN Security Council, a watered down vote, but pressure is mounting on the United States. It is becoming isolated in world opinion. Israel is isolated in the UN General Assembly, and some of that, and certainly what's happening in the States, is a building of popular pressure through similar demonstrations, and we have to keep the pressure up. But the other reason these things matters, and I never forget this, I never take it for granted, we know what this message of solidarity means to Palestinians because they tell us. Whenever we march, I get messages from my comrades and my friends and my colleagues in Palestine who simply say, we see you and thank you for standing with us. I always say this about solidarity. Solidarity begins as an act of empathy, as an act of love. It begins with people saying to oppressed people, we recognize the injustice being done to you. We see you, we hear you, we stand with you. But real solidarity calls us to action. Real solidarity is love made political. And what we have to do is take the extraordinary manifestations of solidarity we have seen across the UK, not just in those marches, but in all sorts of acts. I spoke at the launch of a new PSC branch in Dorchester a few weeks ago. The room was filled with young people who told me, to my astonishment, that 100 of them had marched out of their high school to attend a protest in town. I don't insult the good people of Dorchester when I say it's not a hotbed of radicalism. If you've been to Dorchester, you know that. But that's astonishing. These are people who are saying, we see this injustice, we will not stand for it, and our government does not speak for us. But alongside those extraordinary displays of solidarity, what we have to do is channel that into sustained activism, and we need to build a sustained campaign. And what Palestinians ask of us for meaningful solidarity never shifts. It is always the same. Whenever I bring a Palestinian over from Palestine to speak and they're asked the question, what can we do? The answer is always the same. End your complicity, end the complicity of your government, and the complicity of your public bodies, and the complicity of your companies. And that's the sustained action that we need. We all know this did not begin, despite what the government would have us believe, on October the 7th. There are root causes of the violence we are currently seeing, and those root causes are Israel's enduring military occupation and imposition, brutal imposition of a system of apartheid. And again, I don't use that word loosely. I use it forensically. I use it in the same way that Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem, Israel's leading human rights organization, and Amnesty International use it. And apartheid can only be sustained if it receives complicit support from people across the world. So that's our ongoing task, and we take energy into that task. I said to you before October, we had 76 branches of PSC. At the moment, we're now establishing another 24 branches from people who have become engaged over the past 10 weeks and want to start a new branch of PSC in their town. Before October, the weekly emails we sent out to people asking them to take action went to 75,000 people. Now they're going to 250,000 people. So we need to harness all of that energy and build sustained campaigns to continue to put pressure on our government. We're going to be outside Downing Street, outside Parliament on January the 10th, when the government is bringing back a pernicious anti-boycott bill, which is trying to stop public bodies making decisions, pension companies, universities, making ethical decisions not to invest in companies that are violating human rights and international law. And the government says they shouldn't be able to do that unless the government agrees with the action they're taking. We are lobbying hard, and we've got a coalition of 80 more plus organizations standing in opposition. Friends of the Earth, Greenpeace, Liberty are all standing with us to defeat that bill. As I said, we're back on the streets of London on January the 13th, but we're building our sustained campaigns targeting complicit companies like Barclays Bank. And some of you will know that Barclays is a bank that provides the financial infrastructure to companies selling weapons, producing weapons for Israel. That's a long-term campaign, and we know those campaigns can be effective. If you didn't know that, we saw the evidence in the past few weeks. We've been the leading organization in the UK as part of a global campaign targeting Puma because of its sponsorship of the Israeli Football Association, which runs teams in illegal settlements on stolen Palestinian land. And we had the news over the Christmas period that Puma is not going to be renewing that contract. And we know that's because of the pressure it's been put under globally to end that contract. So we need that energy. A ceasefire will eventually be called when even our political leaders can no longer stomach the amount of Palestinian blood that is being spilled. But on that day, Palestinians, when the bombs stop falling, will wake up still living under a system of apartheid, still needing our solidarity and needing that active solidarity. And that's what we will continue to do. And the money you donate tonight will go into that sustained activism. So I want to thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoy your food. I hope you're building up your strength, because we need you out on January the 6th and back on the streets of London on January the 13th. And thank you all for being here. And Rahil, thank you for organising this. I can see a question, Rahil, in the chat about how much it costs to organise the marches. The major cost for those, when we're mobilising so many, I can tell you that the staging and the sound system alone costs us between 30 and 40,000, particularly when we have two stages, which we often need when we've got that many people.
Hello, Ben. Can you hear me okay?
I can now, yeah. It was silent for a while, but I can hear you.
Yeah, apologies. I just got kicked out of the meeting for a short while. Typical, isn't it? These things happen. But no, I'm back with you now. So, yeah, I think you were just fielding some questions I could hear in the background. Does anyone else have any? Maybe we take one more question, because I know we've also got Jeremy waiting. There's probably 1,000,001 questions people want to ask. Is anything else coming through on the chat function for Ben?
Somebody's asking about template emails to companies we boycott. If you go onto PSC's website and go onto our campaigns page, you'll see lots of actions you can take with the companies that we are targeting. So there's a whole range of actions that you can take there.
That's amazing. Look, thank you, Ben, so much for coming on today. I appreciate your time. Clearly, you're doing some fantastic work, and there's lots more to do, as we've heard. You know, very impassioned, very motivational speech you've just given there. And I hope we can help in whatever small way this evening towards all the great work that you're doing. So thank you once more for being with us this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll ask one last question. Somebody asked about the contract that was ended. That was Puma, the sportswear company, who have a contract with the Israeli Football Association, have announced they won't be renewing it.
That's great. Thank you, Ben, so much. So before I just bring Jeremy into the conversation, I have put in the chat function what you should be doing with the food that you're cooking right now. Just keep an eye on it, turn it down to low heat, add a little bit of water if you need to. For those of you doing a vegetable version, you're probably almost there. For those of you doing a chicken version, it probably will take a few minutes longer. So once Jeremy's said his part, then we can basically come back to the cooking. So without further ado, Jeremy, I've just been asked you to unmute yourself. If you could just unmute and come on for me, please.
Hi, how you doing?
Oh, great. There you go. Yes, I'm really good. Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks for taking time out to be with us here this evening.
You're very, very welcome. I'm only just come on, so I haven't heard what the recipe is you're cooking, but give me a clue.
Well, we're just doing a classic home-style chicken curry, so nothing too complicated, but just something for people to be eating at the end of the session today.
Oh, okay. But what do we veggies get?
The vegetarian version. So we've got people doing veggies, people doing chicken, people doing fish. So there's a whole array of different types of curries being cooked this evening.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll get onto that later. I've only just come in. I've had a very interesting discussion with some Chilean comrades just now about their experience of torture under Pinochet and the solidarity movements that grew up around the world in their support. And they were telling me how important statements and messages of solidarity were during the deepest and darkest days that they went through. And we're now going through the deepest and darkest days the Palestinian people have ever been through. And that's why our solidarity is so very, very, very important. Could I just talk for a few minutes? Would that be okay, Raheel?
Sorry, you just cut out a little bit there, Jeremy. Just say that last bit again.
Would you like me just to speak for a few minutes on a couple of thoughts and then take some questions? Is that the best way of doing it?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Okay, lovely. Well, thanks very much for organising this. And I heard most of what Ben just said, and I couldn't better anything that he said. And I want to say thank you to him and to PSC for the incredible work they've done, not just over the period since October the 7th, when the fighting became much more intensive, but the work they've done over decades of Palestine Solidarity Campaign in ensuring that people understand what occupation actually means. And when the issue came up at the UN after October the 7th, when there was the initial demands for a ceasefire in the face of what had just happened, Antonio Guterres said, well, this didn't all come from nowhere. This comes from 75 years of the occupation. And he, of course, was absolutely right about that. And so what we have to do in our current campaigning is understand the situation that the Palestinian people are facing at the present time. The bombing of Gaza since October the 7th has resulted in the deaths of probably 30,000 people and another 8,000 basically buried under the rubble. And all the pictures I'm seeing of Gaza are just of a flattened landscape and piles of rubble everywhere. And I was digging out pictures yesterday, and I came across some pictures of a school that I visited twice in the northern part of Gaza. It's a primary school, UN Relief and Works Agency primary school, lovely place, very well run, very bright kids. And I've got a picture of me in a classroom with a group of kids where they were asking me questions about politics, about life, and they were so full of hope, so full of determination, and so keen to do something. And this was taken about 10 years ago. That school is now flattened. I suspect many of those children are now dead. They'll be adults by now, but they'd be under the rubble somewhere, or have been driven south as once again refugees from their own homes to the southern part of the Gaza Strip, and then possibly on to Egypt later on. I don't know exactly what's going to happen there. And then you look at all the other destruction that's going on, and you realize the total horror of the situation. And for all those that are facing death at the moment by bombardment, by aerial attack, and much else, there are many others who are facing death for other reasons being lack of medicines, lack of anesthetics, lack of sufficient water, lack of sufficient food, malnutrition, and following on from that will be cholera and will be all kinds of absolutely terrible, highly contagious, but also totally preventable diseases. Look at what's happened in Yemen, where there was insufficient support given to the victims of bombardment, and cholera broke out there, as in other places. That is going to be the next thing. Gaza wasn't good before the bombing started. Gaza had a water problem shortage. It had a pollution problem. It had a problem of sewage discharge into the sea. It had problems of pollution of the aquifer. It had problems psychiatrically and mentally of the inability to travel and the fear of constant bombardment. That is now made 1,000 times worse by the actual bombing that's going on. And so our solidarity is very important. But it's also important to remember what's happening on the West Bank. I have good friends on the West Bank who send me information all the time. The settlers are on the rampage, destroying villages or driving entire populations out in order to take over those villages and turn them into yet another settlement. They're being supplied with high caliber weapons by the IDF. They are undertaking these attacks on villages in order to expand the settlements even further. There are already over 500,000 settlers in the West Bank. Water has been taken, land has been taken, animals have been killed, fruit trees have been cut down, or the crops have simply been stolen. and the apartheid system of roads and transport in the West Bank make the situation untenable and terrible. And then on top of that, we have the eternal problem of the refugees in camps in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Syria, and the huge Palestinian diaspora. And then you look at their situation, and you look at the spirit of the Palestinian people that have stood up against all of this over decades and are now faced with this bombardment. So what do we do about it? First is obviously make demands of our own government, and I've been in Parliament a very long time, and it's never popular in Parliament to raise the issue of Palestine. One gets a whole lot of attacks from the leaders of all parties at various times, and demands that we shut up and just go away. Well, the Palestinian people have nowhere to go to. They're not going to shut up. They're not going to go away, and neither are we. And so when the issue of a vote came up about a ceasefire, I was absolutely clear that from the very moment the issue came up, we would maneuver an amendment to the King's speech somehow to get a vote on a ceasefire. And various amendments were put down, and eventually the one from the Scottish National Party was selected by the Speaker for debate, and a vote took place on it. There was no reason on earth why all those MPs that professed to support Palestine could not have voted for that. Instead, far too many of them chose to abstain and walk away. That gave a message that somehow or other the British government had a carte blanche for its continued support to Israel with arms supplies, with diplomatic support, and its continued abstentions at the UN. But a few days later, it was very interesting when a question and a statement came up in Parliament about Palestine again. Many of those MPs who had abstained on the vote suddenly felt necessary to speak in the chamber and use the words ceasefire now. That was a change. That only came because of the demands from constituents, the avalanche of emails that flowed in, and the demands that were being made. And so in a very small way, something begun to change there in the UK Parliament. We then had the sort of gymnastic acrobatics going on in the UN over a potential resolution, and we ended up with something that frankly doesn't really mean very much, other than they think there should be support and aid sent through to people in Palestine to deal with the horrors that they're going through at the present time. Well, obviously aid being sent is better than aid not being sent, but more importantly, it's the political question of how one deals with the occupation and deals with the continued bombardment and the diplomatic cover that's given by the USA. The only thing we've got is our presence and our voices and our demands. Ben has outlined the sanctions demands we're making against the Israel arms industry and the political demands we're making at street demonstrations all over the country and indeed all over the world. Which brings me on to the two questions, really. One is, wars don't come from nowhere. They come from the pressure of the arms industry to sell weapons to governments in order to undertake military attacks on people, hence the war in the Congo, hence the war in Yemen, hence the many, many other conflicts around the world. But they also come from the pressure that is put politically and diplomatically and the financial aid that's given to Israel to continue its occupation of Palestine. So fundamentally, the issue has to be the end of the occupation. That's why our demonstrations in London, the biggest in the world, I think, have made a massive difference. And the call that we're making for the demonstration on January the 13th is of particular importance, because January the 13th is to be a global day of action which will ensure that everybody all around the world will have some opportunity to protest in some way. The more demonstrations there are, the better. I was involved in the organization of the global demonstration against the Iraq War in February 2003. That was massive. It was massive all over the world. This one is going to be absolutely massive. So I do urge all of you to be there on January the 13th, but also if you can't get to London, then organise one elsewhere, or organise ones in the run-up to the big demonstration on the 13th. We want the London one to be absolutely enormous. I'm going to Leeds tomorrow to do a meeting there to ask people to come to London for the demonstration. I'm doing a second meeting later in the evening in Batley, and then the following week I'm going to do meetings in Preston and other parts of Lancashire, all building up towards the 13th. So let's make sure that it is absolutely enormous, the demonstrations that we organise there. But also don't give up at that point, because that's the point really of takeoff of the campaign against the supply of arms to Israel. And in the meantime, give whatever help and support you can to provide medical aid, to provide support, practical support for the people of Gaza that are going through such horrors at the present time. I've been in Gaza many times. I've been on the West Bank many times. I've been meeting people of the left in Israel who support the campaign against the occupation. They are a minority for sure, but they're also very brave people and should be recognized, just like those soldiers that are refusing to fight and going into Gaza should be recognized as well. And so let's make sure we get that big demonstration. But after the 13th, that is one staging point. And I say to people in my community, they say, what can we do next? I said, well, look, I know it sounds odd and really repetitive, but the more we go out in the streets, the more we demonstrate, the more that we popularize the campaign against the war, popularize the campaign for a ceasefire, that has political consequences, there's consequences for the arms industry and the arms trade, and it helps to bring about that peace, that justice, and that solidarity. I'm so full of admiration for the Palestinian people, not just for putting up with and surviving everything that they've gone through for so long, but also the culture, the history, the music, the poetry, the narratives that go with it. And all around the country, I've been doing poetry events with this book, Poetry for the Many, which we've just produced. And every event I read Mahmoud Darwish's poem in Jerusalem, because that just gives an example of the cultural strength of the Palestinian people that will survive all this and will gain what they should have, is full recognition for an independent Palestine taking its place on the world stage. And it's up to us, as the country that was most involved in the issues from way back, from when Britain had the colonial mandate on First World War Palestine, right through to the foundation of Israel and the attacks on Palestine that have gone on ever since. Please do everything you can. Be there. I'll see you there on January the 13th.
Thank you, Jeremy, for those insightful and inspirational words again. Really appreciate your time this evening. It'll be the first time I think some people may have heard you speak, but certainly with the passion that you've spoken there, and also the information you've given about the Global Day of Action on the 13th of January. I for sure will be in London, and I'm sure that people will. If they can't make it, then doing something locally, again, is a great idea, and I'm sure people can join their local PSC in doing the same. So just want to say thank you again for joining today, and hopefully we'll do something similar following the 13th. And if you could be come on as a guest speaker again following that to see, just give us some insight into what's happened, that would be really appreciated.
Very happy to, and having meetings like this is very useful so we can understand an analysis of what's gone on. So let's mobilize people. For the first time in my memory, a whole population out there is ready to hear the voices of Palestinian people. Let's make sure they do.
Thanks, Jeremy. Here. Okay, so everyone, we're just going to take a little bit of a pause whilst I just go through the final stages of the cooking, and then we'll come back to a couple more people who I've invited along this evening. So a lady called Dima Al-Shami, I'm going to be introducing her shortly. Sarah from Medical Aid for Palestinians would also like to say a few words. And we also have someone who's joined us from Palestine, I believe, a lady called Suha, who's had her hand up for a little while, who's going to tell us what's going on there on the ground. So these are all really important things we need to hear and listen to. So let me just very quickly finish off what we're doing here. So the final touches with the curry were to add in your garam masala, add in your coriander leaves, and then just give it a stir on a very low heat. Just let that bubble away for another few minutes and it's done. You can turn it off and enjoy that. What I will do after today is I will put the full recipe and method on my Instagram page, and I'll also send it out to you via email afterwards. So can everyone see that okay? Yeah, so you can see what it should look like, hopefully. And so that should be nice and clear. I'll leave that there for now. I've turned my heat off now, but hopefully yours will look similar to that. Again, if you want to post any pictures of what that looks like, that would also be great to see how that's turned out. So I'd like to now introduce our next speaker. Her name's Dima Al-Shami. She was actually born in Palestine and came over as a young child, studied here, is now a lawyer and an activist. So I'm just going to ask Dima if you can unmute yourself now, please.
Has that done it?
Hey, there we go. Hi, how are you?
Hi, thank you. Let me just have a look because I can't see. So many technical issues. Okay, perfect. It's such an honour to share my platform with lifelong campaigners for Palestine, such as Jeremy Corbyn and Ben Jamal, and speak in front of such a diverse crowd from all around the world. So thank you so much for being here in solidarity with the Palestinian people and the ongoing situation in Palestine. On the 7th of October, we watched as Gaza, an open-air prison under illegal Israeli siege of air, land and sea for 16 years, broke out of prison. This is an unprecedented uprising that I and many others never believed we would see in our lifetimes. We witnessed the real-time decolonization of a territory that hosts over 2 million Palestinians, all who have long and indefinitely been denied their basic human rights and self-determination. And as any individual anywhere in the world would do, the Palestinians have resisted for the right to live their lives in dignity. In retaliation for the past 2 months, the international community has witnessed the Israeli occupation forces indiscriminately and repeatedly carry out a series of attacks on the unarmed civilian population of Gaza. This is not only unacceptable and undefendable, it is a moral stain on humanity. We continue to watch the collective punishment, including an imposed siege of little to no electricity, food, water, and fuel for 2.4 million Palestinians living in Gaza, in addition to the blanket bombing of an unarmed civilian population. Hospitals, schools, churches, streets, and buildings with whole families in them. War crimes. I ask, how many so-called conflicts in the world exist where one state can unilaterally and immediately revoke such essential resources? This is the strongest indicator that a peoples without an army, a navy, or 3.8 billion military aid a year from the US alone are not on symmetry with their oppressors. The massacre of civilians and a genocide against the Palestinian people is not a justified and proportionate response. All the while, we have watched as politicians, diplomats, and so-called journalists have called Israel's repeated attacks and bombardments a proportionate response, all under the guise of Israel has a right to defend itself. Make no mistake, Israel is not defending itself. It is defending a 75-year settler colonial regime, 55 years of illegal occupation, and a siege that has already spanned 16 years on a 2.4 million civilian population in Gaza. Anybody who has peddled those lies, you have blood on your hands. We are all living through a pivotal moment in history, and as our good friend Lenin said, name drop, there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. We are in the weeks where decades are happening, so we need to make sure that our message is not lost. The Palestinian people, despite being subjected to settler colonialism, belligerent occupation and siege, have mobilized the whole world in their plight for freedom and justice. We have worked too hard, suffered too much loss for the issue of Palestine to be disregarded. So on that note, do not just support us when we are fleeing from bombed buildings and carrying the dead bodies of our children, digging bodies from under the rubble of buildings, when we mourn our loved ones, or as we cry in front of cameras. We do not need you to feel sorry for us. We need you to support us in our plight for freedom and justice, in our fight for liberation, in order to ensure that these things never happen again. Many of us are angry, we are frustrated, we are grieving, and we are worried about what is to come. But I use my platform today to remind you that none of us are powerless. Each of us today has a voice, and we can use it to stand in unwavering solidarity with the Palestinian people and our plight for freedom in every form of resistance available to us. Thank you so much.
Oh, can everyone hear me? Can you hear me? Apologies. I was just summing that part up. Apologies, Dean. I was just saying thank you so much for those powerful words that you've just come on and delivered to everybody. I'm sure they will resonate with people long after, not just today, but into the future. And I believe that you head up the Palestine Solidarity Campaign in Sheffield, so I'll certainly be joining you on some of those demonstrations in the future. So thanks once more for taking the time to be with us this evening. Okay, and I was just then going to say that we've been joined by a lady, I hope I've pronounced the name correctly, Suha, who's actually joining us from Palestine and would like to say some words as well. This was not part of the plan, so let's see what Suha has to say. So Suha, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, please. So you should be able to do that now, if you'd like to come on and say hello.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Suha. I can see you there and I can hear you loud and clear. So would you just like to tell us a little bit about where you are and what's happening right now?
Actually, I live in Ramallah, which is in the West Bank, and I am a little bit far from Gaza Strip, where we should have a unity from Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Indeed, I live here in the West Bank almost for 15 years, while I lived before in Gaza Strip. I lived there. I graduated from Azhar University, and I lived there. I have my extended family, and I have friends from Gaza Strip. I just wanted to thank you for organizing this event. I wanted to thank the UK nation for your demonstration and protesting against the Israeli occupation. This gives us the spirit that we need, and we are always appreciating this effort by your country. Despite the position of the government, we were very disappointed when we hear the Prime Minister abstain in the UN, and they didn't give a yes for ceasefire on Gaza Strip. I'm here just to let you know that we are very appreciated to your nation, and we wanted to tell you that please keep your voice loud, because this is what we need. We need you to push on your government, not to give the Israeli government the carte blanche to commit the genocide against our people in Gaza. I wanted to highlight till the moment, I don't know if you are aware, I know that you are looking to the TV and you are watching the media and you are aware about all of these. But indeed, all of these events doesn't happen in 7 October. As Jeremy Corbyn, he said, and Dima mentioned, it doesn't started since 7 October. Our Palestinian people in Gaza Strip, they lived under illegal siege before 7 October, and for 17 years, since 2007, Gazan people, Palestinian in Gaza, they were suffering from this illegal prison that they living under it. But no one did anything for break this prison and break this illegal siege. Since long time you were living under this illegal occupation, but no one heard about the Palestinian suffering since 75 years. Every day we are suffering from displacement, from killing, from all of the violation of the Israeli occupation. But now it's not only Israeli violation, it's now they are committing war crimes against our people in Gaza Strip, and also here in the West Bank. Israeli side doesn't only targeting Palestinians in Gaza under the excuse and illegal pretext. It's under to defend itself under the international law. The occupation doesn't have the right to defend themselves. They are occupation, and we are occupied people, and we have the right to defend ourselves. It's very, very important to remind you, it's not a war. This is not a war. It is Israeli aggression against our people. A war, the definition of war in the international law means that two states with equal army and equal equipment and all of these issues, they are fighting. But in truth, on the ground, what is happening is the occupation is pumping and shooting our people without any no one from the world ask one question against this Israeli and this is Israeli occupation. No one since the occupation in Palestine questioned the Israeli about the violation they made on the Palestinian people. We are living here in West Bank, but you don't know, and you are not aware about what's going on the West Bank too. Israeli force, occupation force, they every day they entered into our cities, into our villages, and they killed us with cold blood. No one knows what's going on in Jenin. They destroyed Jenin, the infrastructure of Jenin, the water, the shops. They killed people in Nablus, in Huwara, in Jericho, in Ramallah. Every day at night, they come to our cities, to our homes, killing our people. They take they arrested our youth, and they put them in the prison. They made all of the violation. No one questioned Israel about its commitment under the international law. What we are seeking from your support, and really it's appreciated that you are organizing, and please keep doing this demonstration and this protesting against the Israeli occupation, because your voice is really heard here in Palestine. And we send you all the respect because of your position, and we want you to push on your government to change their position against the Israeli. Without putting sanction on the Israeli, they won't stop. Without stop exporting and providing them with the weapons and providing them with the right to kill our people and to commit the genocide against our people, they will never stop. When Russia, when there was a comparison between Russia and Ukraine and what the sanction imposed on the Russia to stop their invasion to Ukraine, no one mentioned that to the Palestinian. When it comes to Palestinian, no one look at the Palestinian, and they have a blind eye. What we are asking now is to push every day, every moment in the media and everywhere, in the street, in your demonstration, to ask for the ceasefire on Gaza Strip, and of course to push on the Israeli to have sanction also on the Israeli, and even here in the West Bank about what they are doing here. And I know that you've heard that the settler, they are attacking the Palestinian, and they call it violence. It's not violence. It's terrorist attack. They killing Palestinian when they went to harvest and to collect their olive from their land, but they are preventing them from accessing to their land. What we are suffering here in Ramallah, that we are living within that it's a building settlement that they built it with illegal matter, where we ask always for the international community, including the UK, that this settlement is illegal and it should be stopped. But what we've heard every day, that even during this Israeli aggression on the Palestinian people, the Israeli government already gave the order to the government to continue establishment of this illegal settlement and to continue confiscating land, confiscating water, and they still preventing us from accessing to our land and to our farms, and even they preventing us from building our homes and they destroying our homes actually in East Jerusalem. Every day they prevent people from praying in Al-Aqsa, and they killing and shooting all people when they're trying to raise their voice or even to raise the flag. Can you imagine raising the flag, Palestinian flag, in our territory? It's prevented, and they can arrest us and put us in the prison without any judgment, without any court. Even though now they are putting also another kind of illegal practices. For example, if I pass through the road from one city to another, there is a checkpoint, Israeli checkpoints, where they take our mobile. Even our mobile, they take our mobile and check everything in our mobile. And if we have anything just to support Gaza and our people in Gaza, they take us and arrest us at least for 1 year in the prison without any court or anything. This is the Israeli violation against our people, and this is the Israeli war crime committed in Gaza Strip. In Israel, in Israel, they are there is a campaign against Palestinian, hatred speech against our Palestinian, and what we are suffering here is actually it's a massive, and what is going on in Gaza, it's a massive destruction here in Ramallah and here in the West Bank. Usually, and before 7 October, and even in Gaza Strip, there was a checkpoints. According to the OCHA, there was 500 checkpoints. Can you imagine a nation in the world can live under this apartheid regime? We have apartheid wall built. It's about 771 kilometers. This apartheid wall, it is built based on confiscated Palestinian land. They prevent Palestinian from, for example, from Ramallah to visit Palestinian in other area. It prevent Palestinian to access their land to cultivate it. They prevent Palestinian to access to their land to do anything, to visit their neighbor, to visit their family. This is before 7 October. After 7 October, these checkpoints increased to more than not only 500 checkpoints, permanent and temporary, but also they increased it to 400 checkpoints. They closed the cities. They imposed illegal also closure on the governorate, on Ramallah, Nablus. We cannot move from one city to another because there is a settler. They are attacking us. They are killing us, even with the protection of the Israeli army. This is in a nutshell about what our life and suffer under the Israeli occupation, not only in Gaza, not even in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, but against all Palestinian. This war is not a war, it is aggression. It's aggression against all the Palestinian people. What we are requesting from you, as I told you, to keep pushing on the UK government to put sanction on the UK, on the Israeli, just to prevent them for killing us with cold blood and provide them with a carte blanche to continue their genocide in Palestine. It's not only in Gaza Strip. Once they finish in the Gaza Strip, they will continue here in the West Bank because they already started displacement in Masafir Yatta, in Khan Ahmar. I don't know if you are aware about these places, but it is Palestinian places, and sorry for that, but they are doing that. I'm longer than what I have to, but this is a situation that we are suffering. I hope that we can travel now to convey the message, even from the Gaza Strip, from the prisoner here, from all over. But thank you for organizing this event, just to tell you about the truth and to have to know exactly what is going on in Palestine, in all Palestine, not only in Gaza Strip. But in Gaza Strip, it is a war crime against our people, collective punishment. In Ukraine, when they said that there is no water, no fuel, no electricity, it's considered war crime. But in Palestine, they have a blind eye. No one question Israel about this. No one put sanction on Israel to stop all of that. We rely on you to be our voice in UK and to push in the UK government. Thank you that you give me the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Suha, so much for coming on and saying those words. I actually feel extremely privileged and humbled by the fact that you've been able to come on and say what you have said. I think everyone on here agrees that words can't describe the atrocities we're seeing and hearing of, and we possibly can't imagine what's happening there and how you must be feeling. But what we can tell you is that we stand with you in absolute solidarity, and we'll continue to march, we'll continue to demonstrate, we'll continue to do events like this to raise awareness, and we won't stop until there's a ceasefire, and we certainly won't stop until Palestine is free. So you have our support, you have our solidarity, and hopefully you can join us on some future events as well. And I'd love for you to be able to come on and speak to some other attendees who weren't able to be on the session today. So please do keep in touch. I'll email you after today, and it would be great to hear from you again. Thank you, Suha. So finally then, just before we wrap this up today, I would like to just invite Sarah back on again from Medical Aid for Palestinians. Sarah, are you still with us? I'm not sure if Sarah's still with us or if she's left. Just bear with me. Sarah, are you still there?
Yes.
Hi, I think you said you wanted to say a few more words. Is that correct?
Perfect. Like I said at the beginning, I've been a bit poorly, so apologies. But I'm nowhere near as eloquent as Dima, Suha, or Ben. What right do I have to speak on behalf of the Palestinians? The first time I went to Gaza was just after the last war in 2014. I've been 9 times. I've been to the West Bank many more times, and I am a volunteer for Medical Aid for Palestinians, and I wasn't expecting to speak today, otherwise I would be much more polished than I am. But I first and foremost wanted to thank you. For me, the people of Palestine are not statistics. I have some very dear friends, particularly in Gaza, Wassal, Noha, Sami, I could list more names. And every day I wait to hear from them, to hear that they're okay. And so I am not speaking to you from Medical Aid for Palestinians, I'm speaking to you as a fellow human, and I'm much more emotional than your other speakers, so I apologize, but I thank you. Thank you for your support. For those of you asking what you can do, keep writing to your MP, and if they don't respond, keep writing and then escalate to the person above them. I sometimes ring the Israeli embassy and ask them how they sleep at night. It doesn't do me any good, but it does make me feel a little bit better. Remember that each Palestinian is an individual human. They are not a number. They all matter. And they're all in unbearable pain, and something that we can't even begin to think about. But also, and for the Palestinians on this call, I apologize for saying this if this is offensive, but for those of us that are in solidarity and support, it is painful. So also take some time for you, do something kind for you, because for us to continue to peacefully fight for the freedom of Palestine and Palestinians, we need to be strong. So I will end it there, Akhil. You're amazing. Thank you so much for everything you've done. I'm going to go and eat my curry now. And I thank you all just genuinely from the bottom of my heart for your continued support and solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, again. I know you weren't, I guess, prepared as such to come on today, so I really appreciate you coming and voicing your words there, and also the great work that MAPS is also doing for the people of Palestine. So look, I think we've come to the end of today's event. I just want to conclude by saying a really big thank you to all of our speakers, to Ben, to Jeremy, to Dima, to Suha, and to Sarah, and also to everybody who's taken the time to join in this evening. I know we've gone on longer than we expected, but hopefully you've heard some really powerful, motivation, inspiring words, and hopefully you have received some more information that maybe you didn't have beforehand. You remember Jeremy said about the Global Day of Action, January the 13th. Please make every effort to be part of that. I just don't know how many people on here are from the UK, but I know that we had over 25 countries at momentum, and it will only continue to do so. We need to keep it at the forefront of our minds and continue to show solidarity with the Palestinian people. So please do look out for future events. I'll be doing some more events in the new year. It'd be great to have you. And if every one of you can invite another 10 people, then we can really make this a huge platform moving forward. There'll be many people who can't make the demonstrations for various reasons. So this will be a great opportunity for people to hear and take part and show their solidarity as well. Just before we finish, I just wanted to give you some updated figures in terms of how much money you've all been able to raise this evening. So for Palestine Solidarity Campaign, the current figure is £1,080, which is amazing. And for medical aid for Palestinians, the current figure is £4,489. So we've raised over £5,500 as a result of this event alone. And those links will stay live for as long as they need to, really, certainly for another week or two. So please continue to donate. Please pass those links on to friends, family, colleagues, and let's see if we can smash through the £10,000 barrier, perhaps. But we'll continue to do more meetings in the future. Other people have also asked about maybe doing some more Palestinian cuisine, some more Palestinian cultural aspects to these Cookalong events. We certainly will be doing that moving forwards as well. So please do listen out for that. There was one other thing that I desperately wanted to share with you all this evening, and that was a reading of a poem by an actress called Maxine Peake, who I'm sure many of you have heard of. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to play that now. It's about 3 minutes long. She couldn't be with us live today, but she has recorded that. So I'm going to play that, and that will be the final thing before we close off for this evening. So I just want to say a really big thank you to you all for taking part. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, but more importantly, hopefully you've realized just how important events like this are to show solidarity for the Palestinian people. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully this will work. And I'll play that video, and then feel free to log off as you wish. So thank you so much again. Bear with me, I'm just going to make sure we've got the right volume here. Bear with me.
A poet, a writer, an editor. Hello, my name is Maxine Peake, and I would like to do a reading for you today. Now, the reading I'm going to do is the last poem ever written by the late, great Rifat Alaria. Now, Rifat, unfortunately, was killed a couple of months ago in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza. Now, Rifat was a learned man. He was a lecturer, a poet, a writer, an editor, and an activist. And when I found out we had a mutual friend in the Palestinian UK-based writer, Ahmed Massoud, I reached out to Ahmed and I said, please, could you tell me a few words about your friendship with Rifat? And this is what he said. He said, we were literally messaging each other a couple of days ago, and it all feels so unreal at the moment. He said Rifat was a learned, hopeful friend with an incredible sense of humour, and he loved his food so much. He said Rifat had always said that we can fight them with our pens. Ahmed said the last time he saw Rifat was in May in Gaza, and they were talking about organising a Palestinian literary festival. But Ahmed said, sadly, I suppose this won't happen now. Ahmed said that he taught his students to love literature, that Rifat taught them how to write, but personally, for me, I think, most importantly, he taught his students how to dream. So I'm now going to read for you If I Must Die by Rifat. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad, who left in a blaze and bid no farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be here this evening. Stay safe, and hopefully I'll see you on another Cookalong soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.